906 Outdoors is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours. Finally, a lake with enough ice to fish on. I'm at Bears Nine Pines Resort on Lake Gogebic, and we're going ice fishing.
Got tip up set out, and we're also jigging in the shack. There we go. Gogebic walleye.
9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. Daybreak on Lake Gogebic. A hard wind dictates the temperature much more so than the thermometer. Wind and cold make everything just a little harder to do. But it doesn't matter. There's finally enough ice to make fishing possible. Anxious fishermen will brave just about any conditions, overcome all challenges, to finally once again bore a hole through the surface of a lake and drop in a minnow.
We're setting up some tip-ups this morning. I like to use the insulated, the covered tip-ups to keep the hole from freezing up on them. And when you open your spool up, we're using about a number 8 treble hook on the end with a split shot about a foot above it with a swivel in the line, so you got a monofilament leader connected to your ice line. Clip a depth finder on there, drop it down until it hits the bottom, and then I got the small line marker, it's called. It's just a small bobber that we clip on at the depth that you want the tip up set at. And once that's clipped on the line, you can bring up your weight, put your bait on. We're using sucker minnows, about 4 to 5 inch sucker minnows this morning. Take the weight off there, bait it up, drop her back down, and reel up the little line marker right to the bottom of your spool. And that way you're all set. Once you caught the fish, you can rebait it and drop it right back down. You don't have to remark your depth. And we're also jigging in the shack. This is a number 7 jigging Rapala. This is an orange and gold that we're using right now. We're using number 6 6-pound test line. And if I go up the line here a little bit, if you see this swivel in the line, this is always a good thing to do, especially when you're fishing with a jigging Rapala like this, because these baits spin, they go in circles when you're jigging them. And when you let it down, it'll swim in a big circle, and that'll start twisting your line, like this, and it'll start binding it up. So that's not good for your line. So it's always good to tie your line directly to the bait and add this little swivel to it. That's going to prevent that. We're still using the sucker minnows like we're using on a tip-up. I picked out a little smaller one for my jig, and I'm just going to hook them through the nose like that, and I'm going to pinch it off here behind the gills like that. So you got some good fresh scent and bait down there as we're jigging that. We're in about 19 feet right here, and I'm just going to drop her down to the bottom, pick it up. Of course, I'm using a Vexilar, so I'll be able to see what I'm doing on there. But then I'm going to just pick her up off the bottom, and we jig her a little bit. And a lot of times I raise it up, sometimes 3-4 feet like that. It's an attractor bait, so that a lot of times the action of the bait itself, by swimming it up and down like that and then holding it still, that Rapala, even after you stop like this, it's still spinning in a circle. It's like swimming down there. And a lot of times you just hold it still, and when a fish comes in, even like today when they're being real fickle, they'll come up and they'll just nab that little fish head on there, the minnow head on there, rather than taking the whole bait. On other days when they're real aggressive, of course they'll grab the whole bait, but sometimes they just come and nip at that little minnow head on there. That's all it takes. Some of the other baits that we commonly use when we're jigging would be spoons as well. Whether it be like a buckshot rattle jig or Swedish pimples. There's all kinds of different names, but spoons work well out here also. Rapala is probably my favorite. We use it in various different sizes as well, and colors, of course. But it's a real good swimming bait. It's good attractor bait. So.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works.
Rapid River Knife Works is the largest custom knife factory showroom in Michigan. Hunting knives, pocket knives, and kitchen knives. Watch your custom knife being made and engraved. Free laser engraving with your personal message or company logo. Lifetime warranty on every knife and free sharpening. Bring the family and visit Rapid River Knife Works today.
We're basically just coming off of first ice conditions, and some of the lake is still that way right now. Normally we start out fishing in the bays, and we didn't really have ice until just a few days before Christmas, and then it firmed up pretty quickly after that. But most of the fishing has been done on the bays. We're just starting to move out to the deeper water now, which is typical for us. We fish the shallower waters during the first ice, and then as we move a little bit later into winter, we start going to the deeper water, and that's where we're fishing now. And ice depths range on the lake anywhere from about 4 to 10 inches right now. Some of the main lake is not as trustworthy as it should be by this time of the year, so we're a little bit cautious as to where you're going to go if you don't know where you're going. There we go. Little tap. A small one. Well, that's a little on the small side, but Gogebic walleye. They've been a little bit fickle this morning. They biting pretty light. You really gotta finesse them a little bit. Now this walleye, I don't know, he's probably around that 13 and a half inch range, I'd guess, which is very common on Gogebic. The Gogebic is a real walleye factory, so we're kind of known for numbers of fish, not necessarily trophy class, not that we don't catch any large fish, but the number size ranges between about 13 and 16 inches is the most common fish that you catch. We've been doing very good on fish over 15 this year. Since ice fishing began here just not too long ago, we were catching a lot of fish from 15 to 19 inches was pretty common. But for the most part, we catch a lot of smaller ones, and keeps you busy. One thing on Gogebic is that we got a new regulation in place now. You can still have 5 walleyes per day. 2 of those fish can be between 13 and 15 inches, and the other 3 still have to be over 15. So it allows the anglers to still go home with a meal. So it's been real good. I've been fishing Gogebic here for 35 years or better already, and years ago the size limit was at 13 inches, and it was for a long time. And because of the number of walleyes that Gogebic has in it, it's a great natural reproduction lake, and there's always great reproduction of walleyes. So there's a food shortage. So by having these all of these smaller fish in there makes not enough food for them all. So over the years they thought, well, we're going to go to a 15-inch size limit and try that and see if it'll improve, you know, the smaller fish, if the growth rate will continue, and give them a little more time to fatten up. But growth rates are simply just slow here. So just a few years back now, DNR changed when they changed that size limit to 15, gave it a couple years, and we had a few lean years waiting for those fish to get of that size, and they found that it didn't really change things much. We still had a lot of smaller fish. They didn't grow that quickly. So
Well, since I seen it go up.
just recently now they made another change on the lake where they allow you to keep the 2 fish between 13 and 15 inches, and then the other fish, of course, still have to be 15 inches and over for your limit of 5. But part of that that change, the reason for that change is they're hoping that we're going to take some of them smaller fish out of here. It's also going to give the anglers some more fish to take home, and their families to have fish fry with. And if they got kids in the boat or something like that, it's much easier to go out and catch fish and be able to bring some home. And in turn, it's going to take some of them smaller fish out of the pool, which in turn is going to make more feed for the bigger fish. Boy, you come in and just bumped her. A little better than the last one. He fought a little better. It's about the same size. You see that now, what I was talking about? You see where that fish hit? He didn't take the whole bait. He just grabbed that bottom treble, and that's where I had that minnow head stuck on there. They're just biting real light this morning. Just come up and barely tapped it when I set the hook. If you wouldn't have had the rod in your hand, you'd have probably missed the fish. With Gogebic, with the number of walleyes that we catch out here, and being able to catch and keep a couple of these fish that are between 13 and 15 inches, honestly, in my opinion, these are the best eating fish that we got between this size. They fry up just wonderful, and they taste better. A lot of people maybe eat big fish, and it's always great to catch a bigger one, but I'll tell you, these are going to be the best tasting fish of the day.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Race Driven.
Get in touch with your adventurous side and find your drive with Race Driven. As an online retailer, dealership, and manufacturer, we can provide power sport enthusiasts with virtually any part or accessories for ATV, UTV, and motorcycles. Customer driven, quality driven, race driven.
Well, today while we're fishing in the shack, another tactic that I use sometimes is if we're jigging one rod, we'll use a slip bobber setup, which is going to be very similar to the same thing that we're doing with the tip-ups. We're using about a number 8 treble hook tied right to our monofilament. Just a little bit above that, we got our couple of split shots to keep it down there. Same method that we're using with the tip-up, except we're just fishing in the shack, so we're using a slip bobber, which slides up and down the line. There's a little bead between the bobber and the stop, and of course it's reeled up into the reel, but there's a little knot that gets tied on the line here, and you just slide that knot to whatever depth that you're fishing, and as you drop it down, the bobber's going to slide up until it hits that stop, so you can set the proper depth. And I do the same thing, the little depth weight that I clip on there to set the depth for the slip bobber as well. And then the knot will just reel right up into your line, just like summertime fishing. And then we're just hooking a sucker minnow on here. Hook the minnow just kind of back towards the back of the dorsal fin there, and we'll drop them down. Got one going there. There we go. It's about the same. Hopefully this one's hooked a little better. That's a little nicer one. Look at that. That's a beautiful looking walleye. Gogebic, they got such a beautiful golden color. Aren't them just beautiful fish? They don't get like the white or pale that they are in a lot of lakes. They keep that nice, most of the time, that deep gold color on them that makes them so pretty. See that fish again? Once again, we just nailed it on that bottom treble. Got a bobber down there. There we got one. That one took her right down. Pike. Little northern. Back down the water. Yeah, well, we've been fishing walleyes here on Gogebic this morning, and We done all right. We caught some fish, so it's getting to be mid-morning, so we're going to move out to some different water and maybe fish for a few perch and some walleyes as well. Alright, well here we're just moved to our new spot now. We're going to set up for some perch fishing. We just put some tip-ups in for some walleyes. Right now we're starting out, this is like a rat finky small glow jig. And now we're going to be using what we call a spring bobber. Attaches to the end of your rod here. The perch on Gogebic are always very finicky biters. So it's a big advantage to have a very light strike indicator like this. Because many times when the perch bite, this spring bobber may only move just about like that, just a little bit, and if you don't set the hook, they'll probably spit it back out and take off. So if you don't have a real light indicator like this, a lot of times guys maybe had bites or perch that they never knew they had. I'm going to tip this here with a wiggler. Wiggler is a mayfly larvae, and that's what's common here in the mudflat in the bottom of the lake, and that's what the perch and the walleye are feeding on as well. Well, the other type of perch bait that I like to fish along with it, once again, is a jigging Rapala. And this is just the same thing that we were using for walleyes earlier, except it's much smaller. Again, just like the walleyes, this is an attractor bait where you can drop it down, you can pound the mud with it, work it up and down. It's an attractor so that the other fish, they see something swimming around and they come out to check it out. And what we're doing is fishing it in conjunction with the wiggler on the other line. You could of course tip this with a wiggler as well, but sometimes they'll come in to this bait, it may not take it, but they'll pick up the wiggler that's just sitting there instead, the live bait rather than this, but this is what'll draw them in for you. We're going to tip this jig with a couple of small spikes, similar to waxworm, except they're just much smaller. So they're good for bluegills, they're good for perch, and sometimes, like, instead of using one, I'll use two of them on there. What we're going to do is tip this on the bottom treble once again and let them dangle like that. They'll come up to the tractor bait. Sometimes if they're aggressive, they might grab the whole thing. But a lot of times the perch, when you're jigging and you bring one in, if you just hold your bait real still in front of them, they'll come up and they'll just nip at these little spikes that are hanging on here, and you'll grab them just on that bottom hook. And sometimes you got to sit and wait for them, or you pick up and move. Sometimes you move 100 feet or 100 yards or something like that. On a day like today, sometimes you hunker down when the wind is blowing and you wait for that school of fish to come through. Got a nice walleye here. We just got done moving. We were at another spot and we just picked up and moved here, got set up, started jigging. We've been here just a little bit, and this is the first walleye on the ice for this spot. Nice fish.
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Blades Bait and Tackle, your hard water connection to Little Beatty Knock.
Well, here at Bears Nine Pines Resort, we're located on the southwest shore of Lake Gogebic. We offer 9 different full housekeeping cabins. They range in size, of course, so we got 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. Even units with private hot tubs in them and fireplaces, depending on what you're looking for. And we got the smaller cabins for fishermen and such, if you only got 1 or 2 people. We also are a DNR license outlet, so you can get your fishing license and that right in our office. Bait and tackle shop that we set our guests up in. When you come, we give you a tour how everything works there. Indoor heated fish cleaning house with running water, electricity, freezer space, and everything. Pretty much anything that you need, we can do it. And our guests that stay with us, I sit down with them. I'll mark up a map for them when they come in, so whether it's January or whether it's July, to help get them on the fish so they know what they're doing. You know, the size of Gogebic, it's almost fishing, you know, several lakes within a lake, because unless you know where to go or you've explored it more, there's a lot of different structures in the lake. Well, actually, the structures are really just weed growth or depth changes and things like that. There's really not much structure in the lake at all. It's primarily big mud flat. I describe it like a big bathtub. But as we start fishing early ice, of course you're fishing the bays just like anywhere else, but we might be fishing anywhere from 3 or 4 feet to maybe 8 or 10, probably at the most at that time of the year. But at a certain time of the winter, like right now, the fishermen start moving out of the bays, that's because the fish are moving out as well. We start fishing the deeper water, 20 feet or over, generally between 20 and 30 feet. We're going to be fishing walleyes and perch at this time of the year. Right now we've been fishing primarily between about 18 feet and 24 feet, and the bite in the shallower water has let up as these fish begin to move out. Of course, there's fish throughout the winter that will hang in the bays or hang in that shallow water depending on what part of the lake that you're in. But for the most part, where I'm fishing right here, we're starting to move deeper. Well, we've had a good day on Gogebic today. Started out this morning with some walleyes, and the bite's been pretty fickle though. The fish have been biting real light. We've had to finesse them a little bit with the baits, and we've noticed with the tip-ups as well that a lot of times they're picking up the sucker minnow, taking a little line out, and they're just dropping it. Perch fishing, we did some in the middle of the day today, and that was also a very light bite. So we had some weather move in this morning, high winds and snow blowing, and in the afternoon the sun came out and things quieted down. So maybe the weather had a little bit to do with the way the bite was today. Sometimes you never know. But we're going to pick her up here tonight, head back and clean some fish. Okay, well here we are in the fish cleaning house. We just got back from a great day of fishing on Gogebic, and we're going to clean some fish. To get my cleaning board, I like to just take a little water, just get it wet before I get started. And most people use a board like this, obviously to clamp the fish, to fillet it. I actually flip it upside down. What it does with an electric knife, you got a little bigger handle on here where it gives me some more knuckle room when I'm cleaning my fish. So it works for a handy little board using it that way. Now I'm going to just, by hand is when I'm going to take the rib bones out of it. And then walleyes, like most fish, got a lateral line right here. And if you just rub your fingers down the center, you can feel those little tips of that, those bones there. If you run your finger this way, you can't feel them. But if you go like this, and they just run to the base of the tail, just about this far. And I don't like any bones in my fillets, so what you do is you just cut down that line right there. And just take that little sliver out of the middle like that. Get rid of that, and then you got a nice butterfly fillet with no bones at all.
Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com for a look at all of our shows, as well as the 906 Outdoors Fishing Report, shopping, and more. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.